if they're not willing to have their entire world rocked, and their ego tested, if they're not willing to go to therapy, if they're not willing to do the work that they have to do on themselves, then you have no business in this business. I could never go back to an 8 to 5.
Are you sure you're in commercial?
Chance I've got to do it.
Yeah. Asking yourself, what am I pretending not to know?
Yes.
Right? Like, I'm pissed off all the time.
Oh, hey, they're here.
What's up?
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. You're really going to like what you're going to watch.
Yeah.
If you haven't liked it yet, you should really hit that like, subscribe button.
Like, subscribe. We're going to get Untucked, and you should probably do it with us.
And if not, we're going to get it all in your inbox.
Let's go.
Getting into real estate,
Yeah.
you went commercial. Like that was the one you decided?
Yeah.
Like that was not the easiest path out there? How'd you decide that?
Yeah, no, it was one of those things. I fell into it by accident. And, my background is actually the nonprofit world. So I've got a little over 20 years in that sector and ran my own nonprofit for a season. And I moved to Colorado in 2012, just for a change. I'd moved from Oklahoma, so a big upgrade, and, was kind of doing the nonprofit sector thing again, and just, was really burnt out, and when you're in that, you're not making a ton of money. You're working with really hard situations. And, a contact that I knew came to me and he's like, have you ever thought about real estate? I'm like, well, sure. Just like everybody else, when you're coming out of high school or you're in college or young adult, you've got these dreams. I'm going to be a real estate investor, I'm going to flip houses. I'm going to do this and that. But I, honestly, I'd never given it real thought. And I was just kind of at a stage in my life, was at a turning point. And I think I was probably around 34 at the time. And, I was just like, I'm tired. I'm 34 and I feel like I'm 50.
Right.
So I needed something different. And so I just decided, and they were looking for an assistant at a commercial real estate company, a small boutique firm in Colorado Springs. And so they're looking for an assistant and a part-time broker that maybe would turn into a full-time broker. So, I just thought, if I'm not going to do it now, I'm never going to do it.
Yeah.
So decided to go ahead and take the leap. And then they said, hey, try it out for 90 days. If you like it, go get your license. And so
Like an infomercial?
90 days in, it was commercial.
Yeah, but it was like an infomercial almost. Like, try for 90 days. If it doesn't work,
Yeah,
we'll
right.
buy
Exactly.
that.
Money back guaranteed. Although the money back guarantee does not apply to real estate.
No
it
doubt.
does not. I was going to say, you guys got a guarantee? What is this? Yeah, no.
At least I had an out, right?
Yeah.
And so, it was still that. So that would have been like 2014. And, the market still hadn't recovered in Colorado and it had been hit really, really hard in 2007, 2008. And so I kind of was like, this seems really, really hard. And another job opportunity came up and I was like, well, this is the easy way out. But I thought, if I'm going to take a chance, I've got to do it.
Right.
If I stay in this vein, I'm never getting out. Right. So I went for it and decided to learn. And after the 90 days, I said, okay, I think I'm ready. And decided to take the leap and just kind of crammed, got all the materials, of course, you don't learn much of anything about commercial real estate when you're taking your real estate exam.
For sure.
So I thought, well, I just got to get through it. So I crammed, studied for about 8 hours a day. Within a month, had my license and decided to go to the races.
All right. So real question. Do you wish you would have taken that money back guarantee after 90 days? Now, looking back.
Actually, no, I don't, because, as hard as this industry is and as hard as the market is right now, there's something inside of me. I could never go back to an 8 to 5. There's something about being an entrepreneur that's just in my blood, and to have the ability and creativity and control over my schedule for the most part, that really, really speaks to my need for freedom and autonomy. And so, as hard as it is, I still love it. And I wouldn't take that money back.
What about residential? Do you wish you would have done residential or any more residential?
Absolutely not. No, I leave that to the experts.
Let me know if you find some.
Right.
It's funny you go from nonprofit to real estate, which for most agents is nonprofit. So it kind of
It's pretty much the same. Yeah, it's kind of a lateral move at times. Yeah.
That's all. Do you niche out? Have you decided to niche out inside of commercial? Because I feel like there's, and correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I guess in my opinion, you can't correct it, but I feel like there's like small commercial, medium, and like the big commercial. The high rise is the stuff that, the big national companies want to touch. They want to handle that, but they're too good for, I call it like the medium commercial, right? The stuff that's too big for real estate, residential agents, too small for the big guys. And there's a happy medium. I like that space personally, but have you found a niche for that?
That's where I'm at, and I love the small to medium sized businesses. And I actually consult for our small business development corporation in the Pikes Peak region, because these are people that are like me, right? Like, I'm a small business. I needed help. I needed mentorship. I need guidance. And so that's really where our company's niche is. I've done the national, I've done the international stuff, and I don't mind it. But, I think where the real purpose comes in for me is really coming alongside those people who are wanting to live out their dreams and start that business that they've been thinking about for years, right? And connecting them to the right resources so that they're set up for success.
Are you sure you're in commercial? Because I feel like you have a heart, and I'm not. I don't know if that. I didn't know that we found the unicorn, Brad.
I think we
found the one. Maybe there's one more out there. I don't know.
Crazy if you pay
exactly. Yeah. No,
honestly,
commercial people talk this way. So what is going on?
Well, I think that there's something that I learned from my background in the nonprofit sector is that there's an importance to listening. There's importance to asking the right questions. And when you're working in a social justice space and you're dealing with hard situations, like I would sit on the Syrian border and listen to Syrian refugees' families talk about their lives and where they're at, and working in Ethiopia. Both my kids are adopted from Ethiopia. So I
love Ethiopia. I've been there like twice. Love it.
Yeah. It's my second home. I've been there almost 30 times, and I haven't been in 6 years since I shut down my nonprofit because of COVID.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely incredible. People just don't get it. But like, to be able to find beauty in situations, even in hard situations, like to be able to take that and the respect and dignity that people deserve, like that just kind of transferred over into my commercial real estate business. And that's just part of my values and part of who I am. And I think that's what sets us apart. I've even had people come to our website, people that are minorities that are very much overlooked in this, which I believe, especially the Hispanic sector, is the future of small business and medium-sized business. But people don't give them the time because there's a little bit of a language barrier or cultural differences. But for me, that's where the beauty is finding the connection and finding a way to help people get to where they want to go and live that quote American dream as much as possible, but to do it in a way where they understand. I mean, commercial real estate isn't just signing a lease or buying a building. There's so many other things that come with it. I tell my clients all the time, just picture me like the quarterback. Like, I'm part of the team and I'm going to make the calls. I'm going to kind of say, here, you need to do this, you need to do that. Here's what you need to do when you talk to the regional building department. We need to talk about zoning. Does your business work in this? I'm not going to have you sign your life on the dotted line and personally guarantee something without you fully knowing and understanding what you're getting into. So I'd rather let a deal not happen or happen a year down the road when somebody's actually ready than getting a commission check.
Yeah.
So let me assist, and this might be a little too big, but what's the impact you think you're hoping to make? Like, what do you want to be remembered for in all the work you do? Like what do you want that to kind of be at the end of the day?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's obviously creating a legacy for my family, for my kids. But I think, our tagline for our company is creating space, building community. And I think that's the role that commercial real estate can play if done correctly. And, so I think that for me, it is that, coming back 3 to 4 years after someone signed a lease and I get to go by and see that person and I walk in the door, they hug me and they're like, okay, we're ready for location number 2. It's to create success, not just for myself, but for other people. And I think if we put other people's needs and other people's goals first, as long as our values align, right? Like, there's a lot of people that I will not work with, like you said. I mean, whether it's commercial brokers or building owners that, every time I call them, all they're doing is just, griping about, immigration or whatever. No, I mean, not to get into politics whatsoever. There's a type of building owner that they have ridiculous amounts of money, but there is no heart, right? And someone that was complaining to me, and I ended up taking myself off of this particular listing, and like, I'm working this small deal and he's nickel and diming this, this nonprofit. And he's like, well, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right now. I'm closing on my house in Scottsdale. And I'm like, okay, well, so I think having a good understanding of what my values are and what our company's values and culture is, and finding the people that align with that, right? And I think that comes with, listening. And people ask me, how did I build my business? And I'm like, well, I called people back, like
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many clients I've received
Yes.
because they called on a sign, the space didn't work for them, but I took the time to listen to them and understand what they're trying to accomplish and then point them in the right direction and give them the resources that they needed.
That's great.
So beautiful.
It's kind of a
Thank you.
weird question, and I'm in a small market, right? And I've had agents and I have friends that are in Boston, large markets like yourself. Some of them want to, how do I ask this politely? Like they want to niche out. Like I only want to work with people I want to work with. And I think that is
Yeah,
fantastic and that's your prerogative and you
sure.
should be able to do that. But if you're a small ass market, like you may not be able to live only working with the people. So have you found ways? I mean, I don't know. Have you found ways to kind of not get past that or just, I don't know, figure it out? So somebody's like, yeah, I only want to work with certain type of people, not fair housing negative, but like, how can they put that aside to still make sure they're paying their bills?
Well, and I think the first thing is setting expectation with the clients that you work with, right? And, sometimes people aren't used to,
Right.
companies like ours
Sure.
where we are being proactive, we're listening, we're curious, so I think it really comes from the very beginning of setting the right expectation. And I think for the most part, I would say 90% of the time, people will meet you where you're at, and as far as like specializing in niche, I personally am a generalist when it comes to commercial real estate because I believe that the retail market affects the office market and the office market, it can affect the
Yeah.
industrial market. So I think there's a value to becoming an expert in all the sectors because of how they affect the other sector. And that helps you serve a client better. I think there's certain times, obviously if I've had clients that are like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, well, that's illegal. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of back away from that. Right. And something that I tell our team all the time is all we have is our time, our expertise, and our reputation. So those are the three things that we guard and that we make our priority. And so, I think it is, I mean, if you're going to be part-time in commercial real estate, it's going to be hard to make a living. If
Good
you're going to
Lord.
kind of say, I'm going to, I just want to work with these people. I think that then that takes a little bit of a need for self-examination. You know, why are you saying only these people? Is it your ego? Is it your pride? Right? But I think there's something that we get to learn. And the thing I love about commercial real estate is that every day is different, and every day you're talking to somebody new. You could be talking to somebody who wants to open a pet shop or a nail salon, and these are completely different
Sure.
things and
Yeah.
things that you have to consider and understanding what a building department's going to require, what kind of, what's a contractor going to charge, how much tenant improvements are you going to need to pay? And I want somebody to walk into a situation with their eyes wide open, because I like to sleep at night, so
Fair. Well, so I got a tactical question. I know Wayne's got them lined up too. So tactically, like if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I think I might want to do commercial or do resident. I'm doing real estate. I might do commercial." How would you tell somebody it might not be good for them? Like what would you tell them? Like, hey, if you can't do this, you're not going to like commercial. Like, kind of scare people off a little bit. What have you learned from that?
yeah, well, I mean, if they're not willing to have their entire world rocked, and their ego tested, if they're not willing to go to therapy, if they're not willing to do the work that they have to do on themselves, then you have no business in this business, and unfortunately that, our business is filled with people that are just, full of ego and it's about the fancy cars and the office. And, like if you're not willing to help people, right? And put your ego aside at times when you're working with other brokers or owners that are difficult, if you do not have the ability and humility to be able to set that ego aside and do what's right for your client, then you have no business doing it. And you have no business getting into this industry if you're not willing to commit to a solid 3 to 5 years
Sure.
of hard work.
Yeah.
That's how long it takes to get established if you're doing it well.
Yeah. Fair. I was thinking more like, like if you don't want to wait 6 months for a paycheck when you ink the deal, right? Or if you don't want to
Right.
have to show up
Right.
to every single showing because there's not lock boxes and we like to keep all the details to ourselves kind of things.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to adapt. And, if you're pretty rigid, I don't know if this is the business for you. And,
Yeah,
and if you can't get creative, and if you can't
sure.
get curious, then really, it's not the right fit.
But how do you feel like most commercial agents starting out find their business? I feel like a lot of it's either comes from the company and they say, hey, go bid on this because you're a retail wholesale guy, or it's you start off with the low hanging fruit. How do you? Because I guess a question I used to ask people when they go, I might do commercial. I'd say, well, more people that could buy a house today or could buy a commercial building, and they're like, house.
Right.
I'm like, let's start there because we can get you fed
Right.
first. So I didn't know if there's certain things like that how people can find business when they're just starting out in a new environment, like when you move to Colorado.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in commercial, what happens is someone's brought onto a team or brought on to work with one other broker that's kind of essentially mentoring them, I guess. But I use that word very generously because the mentorship is not quite in the vocabulary. It's kind of like, this is the way that I've done it for 30 years. Just copy me and do what I do.
Right.
And I personally believe that people have to be who they authentically are, and they can't sell, they can't lease until they're in touch with who they are and how they can find a way to help people. And you're right. It's like sometimes the checks are 6 months out. Sometimes they're longer. I remember when I first got into the business, I worked 6 months on a deal and it was for a single office. And my split ended up being like $21. That didn't even cover my freaking gas for 6 months. They didn't even cover my gas for a week. So I think but there's times that you have to do that because you have to learn the market.
Yep.
And you can't just learn the market by driving by buildings. You have to do it by interacting with brokers, by interacting with, again, the building department, title companies. Like, this is a team sport. But very often people go into it with the mindset of, here I go, I'm going to accomplish all this stuff, but you can't do it well without spending that time. And I think finding success in the business is reaching out to the different vendors, the different subcategories, all the different periphery businesses that you have to interact with and deal with in order to really help people the right way. And here's the thing, when you build relationships like that and you let title companies know that you care and you actually read title work, like, people don't do that in our industry.
For sure.
There's a lot to be learned, and it's not just paperwork. It is a story of a property. And I think coming with that mindset of just a kind of a more of a holistic, outlook, those are the same people that are going to refer you business down the road, right? Because and lenders are huge, right? Understanding how lenders work, what they're looking for, what their appetite is. There's just a lot to the industry than transactions.
Sure. Absolutely. It's funny. I bought a commercial building. I hired a commercial company to do it. And it still cracks me up because it was like the day of inspections and they're friends of mine. And they're like, hey, let me know. I was calling them. I was like, what time are you going to be here? Like, well, we're not coming to your inspections. Like, let me know how they go. And I was like, and then like, we need a roof quote. And they're like, here's some numbers to call to get a roof quote. I'm like, dude, you better put down this phone and dial this fucking number and get me a roof quote. Like, I have a bigger license than you. I'm just using y'all because you found it. Like, God. Right. So yes, relationships are everything. So Absolutely.
I get two questions before we get into the nitty gritty commercial stuff. What did you learn about you that was the most impactful? And like, how would you recommend, like, what are the steps you'd recommend somebody take to go find themselves? Like, you're like, hey, you need to figure out who you are, find yourself. Like, how would you actually guide, like, what are some of the really practical things you tell, 21-year-old kid, whatever it is, like, on how to actually go do that?
Yeah, and I don't know if a 20-year-old kid would listen to what I had to say, because I know I didn't listen to very many people when I was 21, but I think there's so many things that can be done. I think therapy is huge, and I think being realistic and honest with ourselves and having the people around us that can be a mirror, can be a reflection, and that can give us wisdom. I think therapy is huge. I think somatic healing, understanding your nervous system, understanding the polyvagal theory. And I'm actually going to have on my podcast this afternoon, have my massage therapist who specializes in this, who works with people with trauma. And I think it's recognizing what you've been through and how it's helped you become who you are. And then how do you heal that in order to become a better person for yourself, for your family, and for your clients. I think having a group of people around you that speak truth.
Yeah.
For me, having, a friend group that no matter what I've been through, they're there.
Right.
it's building a support system, and it's not just like, oh, my mom and dad. I mean, that's great. If they're a support system, awesome. But I think you need to have that support system all the way around you. But there's so many resources available now. Like, for me, like there's times where I get really worked up. And there's an app that I use called the Tapping Solution that helps your body, helps you get back inside your body, helps you get present. I think we get so concerned about what's happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. And I'm guilty of this every single day myself, right? But what are the tools that you can use to get you back to your core, to get you back to where you can be grounded and present?
Well, it's so beautiful. We don't have to live in a brutal state. And when you start realizing all those tools are available, 60 seconds of mindful breathing or whatever it is, all these different things that we can tap into. So if I heard you correctly, it's really therapy, I think, is beautiful. Like let someone else do some digging.
Yep.
Intentional reflection.
Yeah.
Asking yourself, what am I pretending not to know?
Yes.
Right? Like I'm pissed off all the time.
Yeah.
Why is that? Whatever those things are, right? And then, like you said, getting a radical group around you that a lot of times I think people have to go build. Like sometimes that doesn't just show up, right? I know Brad and I, we get on planes to go to like our group E5 and other things like that. They're like, get in a room with people that love you, but are also going to throat punch you when you need to get throat punch. You know what I mean? It's like that group is like, I'm going to give you a hug, a hand up, or a throat punch. It's going to be one of those three, right? Maybe all three, depending on the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that's really beautiful. And I think that the greatest gift you can give yourself is that level of self-awareness. Yeah.
Well, because to be able to operate from a place of groundedness, you're less reactive. You take things less personally. And I'm a spiritual person. I grew up very conservative evangelical, which I don't quite identify with anymore. But there's so much beauty in a lot of different religions. And I think in Buddhism, one of the things they talk about is the ability to detach, right? Like for us to not over identify with what we do, like, and who we are, and understanding that who we are at the core is good. Right. And let that be our starting point. But I think so often, especially in this industry, we feel like we have to prove ourselves. And, I think we need to first prove ourselves to ourselves. And that is that coming back home to ourselves and really being willing to get vulnerable and honest before you can go out there and really, I mean, there's tons of successful people they're not healthy. Right. And I've been in that place. I've been in that place of overworking and being a total workaholic and avoiding things. But, sometimes for me, it's a matter of I'm not doing good right now. I'm not okay. I'm shaky. I'm just freaked out. So there's times where in the day where I'll literally just go and lay down on the couch for 30 minutes, do the breath work, right? Get grounded and kind of get the mind under control and just be like, it's going to be okay. I think often we don't trust ourselves because there's so many voices in the world, right? That are coming at us that I think it's important for us to take that time to stop, close your eyes, lay down for 30 minutes or 45 minutes and get back in touch with yourself. And then I find when I get back to work, I can do 8 hours worth of work in an hour, right? Like you could be productive because you're present and your brain's working the way that it should be because it's not in fight or flight.
Yes, absolutely. That's so beautiful. I think that's your next book. Yeah, no, that's amazing. All right, so let me ask this: someone who is grounded and knows what you're about, how do you advise someone who wants to build a for-purpose business? Right? Like they want to do it in the right way, but they're going into this crazy world. Money may not be their driver, but money's important, right? Like it's a part of it, just like, it's important to eat every day. What do you see some of the hardest things for them to conquer, or some of the questions maybe they need to ask themselves before they jump into that? Well,
I think number one, you have to establish your why. I think that's it's been said a million times. There's books about it and all that stuff, and it could be cliche, but I think it's more of like, why am I really doing this? Who am I looking to? And you're right. Like it has to be a benefit to you as well. But what is my driving force? And I think it's important to have a business coach, a mentor. I mean, I couldn't do what I do without my business coach, right? To be able to bounce ideas off. And I think a huge part of that is, and where my business coach started me out was, what are your values? And we're not talking about just like freedom, this and that. And that can be true. but why? Like the deeper stuff. Like my values exercise with her was like a session or two, right? Like
Yeah.
it is not just, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. It's not values are not goals.
Right.
Values
Yes.
are the things that help you make the decisions and keep you in integrity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think that's a great place to start. But yeah, I mean, but that's just the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then
First off, I think we just became best friends. But yeah,
Hey,
no,
hey,
I
what
think
the
you nailed
hell?
it. I think you nailed it. Yeah.
thanks, Coach
Kelsey, how
Wayne.
do we kick Brad off and just
Uh-uh.
keep it roll? How do we no?
That's why I'm the
no,
editor
no.
on this thing, so you can't do that. Kelsey, you
Hey,
don't
the
touch that
team
button.
did release a video yesterday for an event we have coming up, and it was like all me. And Brad's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey, I don't know. They're doing their thing. Anyway, we're gonna have."
I think that we forget how important it is to ask for help. One of the tools that I use, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Enneagram, but that's been a huge tool, and not just like the trendy stuff, like the deep, hard stuff, understanding what motivates you, understanding your shadow side and your own darkness, right? And being able to confront that. And I think that's part of identifying your values is keeping yourself in check. I'm an Enneagram 2.
Oh, of course you
So
are. That's like the
I'm
nice
the
one,
helper.
right? Yeah.
You're nice until you get pushed enough, and then all bets are off. Then you turn into demon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm an 8.
So
I heard that's the best one.
that was actually going to be my guess.
What's Wayne? Wayne, do you even know yours?
I was a Scorpio and born under a half moon. So I don't know I don't know. And basically that, hey, by the way, that's dating in 2025. Like first question is like, so what's your birthday? And you're like, nope, get behind me, Satan.
Right?
Anyway, it's like where are we going? There we go. Yeah, no. Oh God. So it's so weird. All right, back to commercial real estate. All right. What are some of the misunderstood trends right now? Like what's happening in commercial real estate? What's some of the misunderstood trends? What would you tell people that are like freaking out or worried about investing in commercial?
I mean, people are freaking out about interest rates right now, and, about 3 years ago, when I was having my best year yet, I mean, it was probably even before that, 2022, I didn't have to do anything. Things just came to me. Deals just happened,
Yes.
and, but people now are, interest rates had to go up in order for the market to correct, and it is correcting. But I think a lot of mistakes that people are making is they're making their decisions solely on interest rates. And, there's not a lot of great investment properties in our market right now because we are in an adjusting state. But that doesn't mean that you just sit back and hold. There are opportunities to be had if you're paying attention. And, I think that so many people think that, and the office market is tough, right? But we're seeing it's not just like it's stagnant. There are some people that are making changes. They're changing how they, businesses are changing how they do the office thing. The industrial market is just still through the roof. I mean, when I started in this market, you could buy an industrial building for $40 a square foot, but now you can't find anything for $200 or less per square foot. So the market has changed and is continuing to change and adjust. But I think the trends right now are, and last year, everybody was like, oh, it's an election year, so I'm going to hold back. And I'm like, at the end of the day, certain industries I can understand are affected by politics, but I think people just are using different things because they're not acknowledging their own fear, right? And they're not getting curious enough to go deep enough to make the right decisions. But, so trends that we're seeing, I mean, in downtown Denver, they just had 2 towers that were purchased for like, I don't know, it was like 1/20th of what they sold for last time. And it's office buildings that are now going to be converted into housing. So those are some of the trends we're starting to see. But, post COVID, we're seeing, retailers going into smaller spaces, but then have warehouses and online businesses to kind of supplement. Those are some of the trends that we're seeing. But as far as, kind of where people are struggling is just, I think they just don't understand. And I think that's why I love getting on podcasts. That's why I started my own podcast. And it's why we serve the clients that we do. Because ultimately, and I've been an owner of commercial real estate, I'm a commercial real estate investor, but I'm never going to ask somebody to do something that I would not do myself, right? And I think people just don't have the confidence because they don't have somebody along beside them that are willing to say, I don't know if I would do that. Yes, I'd make 50 grand if you do this deal, right? But if it's not something I'm willing to do,
Right.
then there's no reason for me to advise a client to do so.
So if you're the client and you're starting out and you want to get into commercial investment, say I sell my 5 residential, tired of the monthly drag on them,
Play
and
Monopoly. Here we go.
I've got
Hard place.
I've got $1 million or whatever it needs to be in your market to be decent. Where would be the first step you would recommend somebody on a safer investment?
So the safest investment is probably going to be, a single or multi-tenant triple net lease investment. Ultimately, though, what we're running into is, cap rates aren't quite what they used to be because prices are adjusting, right? And the market is changing. So ultimately what I do is I find out from them, what is your goal? What kind of return are you looking for? And so then I might say, well, let's look at a building that maybe is a coin laundry, or a car wash, or different things that are more specialty, but that also do generate income in any market, right? So it's really about understanding your client's goals. What are they willing? I mean, if we can find a value add type situation, that's great. But I wouldn't want them to go buy something for $1 million. I would like them to have some working capital to start with. And so if we can find something for 750, right now, would I advise somebody to go into a multi-tenant office building? Probably not. But if you can find an office building that's medical or dental that, is for sale, well, these are industries that people need no matter what, right? And so if you can find a small medical building or even a warehouse building, right, that has, 3 to 5 or more year term on it, then I think it's worth looking at. And sometimes we have to go off market to try to find things like that.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's great. One of my favorites that I found is small individual offices, a couple office buildings. Therapist, I swear to you, man, like
Yes.
they come out of the
Yes.
woodwork.
Well, I mean, look at us, between the
I'm
three of
married to
us, how
one.
many therapists do we have?
I'm married one. It
We
was a lot
probably
cheaper.
have a dozen on the payroll between just this one screenshot. Yeah, you're like, which one?
Yeah. No,
Oh.
that's definitely a sector that is definitely growing. So if you can find somebody, and a great situation would be to buy a building that a therapist wants to be in with all their people, right? And you get to hold it for a while. They're not ready to buy yet, but down the road, when you've got several therapists in there, that's a great business model that are paying the main therapist to be there. I mean, you've got some consistency and you've got some legs to walk on there. And then, maybe in 2 or 3 years after talking to your CPA, how long you should hold it, give them the opportunity to buy it, then 1031 that into something else. Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what, that is a huge source of my referral business is I build relationships with residential agents. And, that is, and one thing that I checked with, Keller Williams before I got in there, I'm like, I've got relationships with people from other companies. I want to make sure that I'm connecting my person to somebody that works for them. And, if it's in the KW office, great. But that's, they want to help people too. And so that's one of the things that really drew me there, besides being able to keep our own branding, our own culture, but I think commercial agents get out there and meet residential agents because the people that are moving to town could also be moving their business, right? So to be able to build that relationship and to be able to provide a 20 or 25% referral to a residential agent, and all they have to do is do a warm intro. I mean, that's pretty low hanging fruit, and I will say that very often a lot of the referrals that I do get from residential agents really don't go anywhere. But that doesn't matter to me because this is a relationship business, right? And so I talk to that person, work them through, and I make sure that the residential agent is involved and knows where everything is at. So you're building trust with that. And so the deal of the century could come any day, anyhow. But I think it's that talking to the person who's in front of you, treating them right. And if it turns into something great, if not, that's fine because you've now established another connection. And when they or somebody that they know needs something, they're calling you. And so I think for commercial brokers, man, build relationships with residential agents. I think there's very much an us versus them type situation with commercial and residential agents. But I'm like, listen, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And to do good business, to take care of people. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I ended up at Keller Williams is because of someone that continued to refer business to me. And I saw how they treated people. And then we started seeing, oh, wait, maybe there's some collaboration available here.
My favorite thing about commercial is that you guys can structure things in the most bizarre ways. Like, it's like that and my favorite chicken. What I would just love to know, just for fun, what's been one of the craziest, like, I can't believe we put this together kind of structures, as far as like being able to, like, hey, here's how they figured out how to grab this building. Like, what are some of the just the bizarre ways you've seen that put together?
Man, there's just so many. And I think that's what I love about what I do is that you can get creative, between buyers and sellers and investors. Gosh, nothing specific is coming to mind right now. There was a deal. This ended up not going through, but it was an old historic building and, was on the market forever. The building was the people who owned it. The husband was sick. The wife was just kind of barely making things continue to go. And we created a structure, if it would have worked, because they were in a situation where they were about to get repossessed. They had taken a hard money loan. They had not recovered from COVID. It was more of a hospitality type situation. Again, historic building. So there's a lot of restrictions there. There's a lot of upgrades that have to happen in order for it to change hands. So what we were trying to structure was for my client to take over the hard money loan and then hold it for 2 years, get his business concept in place so that the banks could take a look at how you've got the business financials for 2 years to be able to then refinance it with more of a traditional / SBA loan to be able to do that. However, because of the situation that the sellers were in, they were too far deep to be able to make that deal happen. And then the hard money lender at that point was just like, we just want our money or we want the property.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think
that
that's
could
the
have been
beautiful
really
thing about commercial and having a heart. And one of my favorite commercial agents, Kevin Cross up in Alaska, one of the things he taught me was like get to know the seller, like ask why. What's the
yes,
most important thing about selling? And I think on the commercial side, sometimes you don't forget that. And sometimes like I just need a steady $5,000 a month to be able to survive. It's like, cool. Then let's do an owner finance for the next 10
exactly.
years, give you that steady 5 grand. Because if I give you a million right now, the government's gonna take whatever that is,
Yeah,
but like get to the heart of like what's really going on
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Hey, we had a tragedy happen to this property. We just want to get rid of it. Like whatever that is, like there's so many beautiful ways in the commercial side to structure things. But I think he's had so much success and you have too, because you've gone deeper than the just they want 500,000. We only have, they go below that and go like, hey, these are real people that want to make moves, that want to get closer to their grandkids, that want whatever those things are. Like let's get into that, which I
Understanding
think
what the
is
true,
beautiful.
yeah, I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
understanding what the true motivation is and what are the true pain points. And
Yes.
I tell my team all the time, yes, ask questions, listen, but what are the questions they're not asking?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then find a way to ask those questions. And that takes listening. It takes being intuitive,
Yeah. Yeah.
and reading body language, right? Like,
Yes.
sometimes what people don't say is the loudest.
Absolutely. All right. I got rapid fire questions. You ready?
I'll try.
Okay. Early
Yes, I'll be
morning
your best friend.
yeah. Yeah. There we go. Early bird. Yeah, absolutely. We're in early bird or night owl.
Oh gosh, I would probably say right now night owl, but I'm trying to work myself back to being the morning person.
There you go. All right. What's the most important daily ritual that keeps you grounded? Like, is there one thing you do consistently?
Yeah, for me, it's going out in my backyard in my garden and just taking some breaths, feeling the sun,
Yep.
and just trying to get grounded.
Yep. Like my kids say, go touch grass.
Absolutely.
Is there any AI that is helping your business right now? Any AI tool or anything you're using that's helping?
Yeah, I will definitely use like your typical chat GTP or GPT, especially when I'm researching a property that maybe is off market or I'm trying to understand zoning. I just had a referral come to me, someone who wants to buy some property in Iowa. I know nothing about Iowa. I know nothing about this property, but to be able to use that to narrow down and get me to the right resources so that I can point
It's
people in the
amazing.
right direction.
What's the book you give the most off?
Gosh, I recommend a lot of books, but I honestly I really love anything by Brene Brown. She just kicks your ass and doesn't care and loves you at the
So
same
good.
time. But I'm just, to me, I love reading and not just for growth, but for pleasure. Like I love cooking. So right now I'm listening to a book by Tom Colicchio, who's an incredible chef, and Top Chef is one of my favorite shows. And I think it's important that when we read and when we consume stuff, it's not just because we've got to get better, but it's because we love it.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one thing people assume about you that is totally wrong?
Wow. Well, I would say people think I'm in my 30s, they're totally wrong. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
going on 46.
Hey man, what's the hack to that?
I think it's, my East Indian genes. My mom's side of the family is also very healthy, and they're Caucasian. I think it's that. And then I think it's, as I've gotten older, I used to just push, 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 but it's the secret to just like taking the time for yourself to fill yourself back up.
Absolutely. Yep. What's the biggest mistake you made building the business?
I think the biggest mistake I made is thinking that I needed to be somebody else, and I needed to project fake confidence. And I think it was very much like thinking that I needed to fit into this mold. And I hope in my life and in my company that we see commercial real estate change, that we see more women, we see more people of color that are getting into the industry. And I think I felt like I had to, go play golf. I suck at it. I don't like it. It's an excuse to day drink for me, right? It's so like feeling like if like I had to do these certain things in order to be successful.
What is there a non-profit or something like that you're really excited about right now that you want everybody to know about?
Yes, absolutely. I just joined the board for an organization called Crazy Love Africa, and they work with empowering women who have HIV and educating their kids. They do these incredible opportunities, and I think businesses should get on board with this. They provide $500 micro grants. They usually get paid back within a year, and they've created this incredible sisterhood in Uganda. And I think right now, especially with the cuts that have been made to USAID, the access to HIV meds, like it's a crisis. And I think it's very important for us as human beings to step in and do our part, do our small part. So, and they've got an incredible fair trade artisan website. It's just incredible. So I tell people go to crazyloveafrica.com.
That is awesome. And any other links like that, send them to us. We'll put them in the show notes. That'd be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Man, I think sometimes we forget the impact that, $200, $500, whatever
Yeah.
can make sometimes. So that's,
It can change an entire family for generations.
yeah, that's beautiful. Last question, then I'll let Brad come back to the show. What do you want to be proud of this time next year? What are you most excited about, or what do you want to be proud of?
I want to be proud of making a good transition to Keller Williams and building a team that is making an impact, not just financially, but making an impact within the community. Thanks for having me. Thank you. Thanks. Pleasure meeting you guys and spending this time with you.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. So I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we liked recording it with Caleb. Do me a favor. If you want to learn more about commercial real estate, we just put together a video with 5 things that you need to master and things that you need to know. So therefore you can be the best commercial agent out there, or maybe you don't get into it at all, but make sure you check out the video because we drop some nuggets of truth for you. Okay. That's it.